Okay, let's learn that. The Rebbe is saying that the sadness that a person feels because of their sins has a very specific time and condition in which it works and is valid. Other than that time, it's not valid. It's the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, making you sad because then you are more likely to sin again. And therefore, Hine bein shenofel le'ha'atzvus b'sha'as aveda, b'talmud Torah b'tfilah, whether the sadness occurs during learning or davening, when you're doing something holy, ubein shenofel le'shalei b'sha'as aveda, or even if it happens when you're not doing anything holy, just going about your business, zeis yosem elibe, this is what you should consider seriously. And that is, ki ein hazman gromo ko'es la'atzvus amitis. This is not the right time for a true regret of the sin. Afilu l'daigas avenes chamurim chas v'sholem. Even if they're serious sins, big sins, and it feels like you have to deal with it, but no, it is not the right time. Rak luzes, to have a real regret for the sin, tzarich kviyas itim, you have to set aside some time, v'shas hakosher, and a good time when you have yishuv hadas, when you have some peace of mind, where you can concentrate. Lehizbeinem begdulas Hashem asher choto loi, in order to consider God's greatness against whom you have sinned. In other words, you don't just regret what you did, you regret who you did it to. Kedei she'al yedei zeh yeh libei nishbar be'emes b'merirus amitis, so that you have a true regret, you're truly brokenhearted, and you change. But if you're just sad, it doesn't change anything. Ukemevor ezu b'mokim acher. In another place in Tanya, he explains when is this appropriate time when you can do a real tshuva. In the day, it's before you go to sleep. In the week, it's Thursday night. In the month, it's the beginning of the month. And in the year, it's Rosh Hashanah. V'shom nisbayer gamkein, and there it also explains ki miyod acha shenishbar libei b'itim kvuyim ha'hem, that in those appropriate times, when you did it all right, and your heart is broken, and you really regret the sin, azai yosir ha'etzav melibei legamri, then you remove the sadness completely from your heart, v'yamin emunah shlema, and believe with complete faith, ki Hashem hever chatosei, that God has removed your sin, v'rav l'sleach, even if you've done this many times, God can forgive many times, not like a human being, with 3 strikes you're out. God can forgive many times, v'zu hi hasimcha ho'amitis b'Hashem, and this brings a true happiness that comes after the sadness. So there are 2 things about this regret. Number 1, for it to be legitimate, you have to know who you hurt. Who did you sin against? It's not the act that is so unforgivable, it's who you did it to. So you have to identify, who are you asking for forgiveness? And number 2, if there is someone you sinned against, then there's a possibility of forgiveness. But if you're just upset with yourself that you did something really nasty, well, how is forgiveness going to happen? You've got no one to talk to except yourself, and yourself is the problem. So you can't forgive yourself. If you're if you're the one who's guilty of a sin, you can't also be the forgiver. So if you can't identify who you sinned against, then who are you going to ask for forgiveness? And when you do ask God for forgiveness, then you have to believe, because He told us many, many times, that when you ask for forgiveness, He forgives. So forgiving yourself, a lot of people try to forgive themselves. That's totally frustrating. You can't seriously forgive yourself. That's not even a thing. Identify who it is that was affected and get forgiveness from the offended party. Any questions, or we continue on to the next chapter? You have to ask your soul for forgiveness, because it's your soul the godly soul. It's the godly soul that was offended or hurt. So your human soul has to ask your godly soul for forgiveness. Actually, why would a person regret a sin? You do a sin because you enjoyed it, because you loved it, because you wanted it, because it was irresistible. You just had to. And now all of a sudden you regret it? What happened? Wasn't as much fun as you thought? You're disappointed? Got to find a better sin? See, it's like this. Your godly soul never participated in the sin. That is so important to know. When you sin, it's only part of you that is sinning. There's a part of you that is not. It never agreed, it doesn't want the sin, and it doesn't participate in the sin. That's why after you calm down, after you've sinned, that part of you that never wanted to sin now says, "Why did you do that to me?" That's your conscience. People who have no conscience is because they sin completely. Every part of them sins. So which part is going to be hurt and offended? So there's no conscience. So conscience means the part of you that did not want to sin is upset with you. Why'd you do that to me? Why did you drag me into something I didn't want to do? That's the godly part of you. So who's offended? The godly soul that never sinned at all. The part that never sinned objects to the sin. So what do you do to gain forgiveness from the godly soul? You add a mitzvah. You say, to make up for this, I will do another mitzvah that you enjoy. Because the godly soul thrives on mitzvahs. The godly soul doesn't need to be bribed. It needs to be rewarded for not having sinned. So until now, we were talking about a person who is a little depressed because of sins. You know you did something bad and you're regretting it and you're feeling guilty and you're ashamed and you can't look your mother in the eye, etc., etc., etc. So the Rebbe says, don't do that unless you're really doing tshuva. And to really do tshuva, you got to set some time. It can't be spontaneous. You got to think about God, get to know God better, and then you will regret what you did to him. But here's another problem that's an even more difficult one. A person is upset not because they did anything bad. They're upset that they think of bad things and have bad feelings, nasty feelings. They're upset with themselves because they realize that they have a streak of jealousy. They're upset with themselves because they have a streak of anger. They're upset with themselves because they have a weakness. Not that they did anything, but that they're not strong in their morals. In other words, they're not upset about something that happened. They're upset with what they are. I'm a nasty person. I'm a weak person. I'm an ugly person. So it's not I did something. I am depressing. What I am is depressing because of the thoughts that I have and the feelings that I have that are really embarrassing. So I'm not upset about what I did. I'm just disgusted with myself. So here, the Rebbe's advice wouldn't apply. You can't say, now is not the time to worry about it. You'll do tshuva on Yom Kippur. This is not about tshuva. I don't like myself as I am right now. How do I not get depressed about that? And we're not talking about clinical depression here. We're talking about sadness, discouragement. How can I not be discouraged knowing how not nice I am? And of course, this applies to almost everybody in the world. Chapter 27. Now the Rebbe says, Ve'im ha'atzvus eina medaigas avenes, and if the sadness or the discouragement is not from sins, something that happened, it's in the past, elo mehirhurim royim v'taivas rois, rather it comes from sinful thoughts or sinful desires that occur to you. You didn't do anything, but the fact that you have such thoughts makes you sad. So here we need another advice, another suggestion, because you can't just say, I'll put it off for later. So the Rebbe says, in that case, Hineim neifloislei sholei b'shas ha'aveda, if these thoughts occur in the regular hours of the day, not middle of davening, elo be'es oskei ba'asoko v'derech eretz ukahai gavna, you're starting to feel discouraged about yourself while you're busy with worldly things. You're in the middle of eating, you're in the middle of school. Listen to what the Rebbe says. You think you have a reason to be sad, but actually, it's the opposite. Adarabba, yesh le'lismeyach bechelkei. Instead of being discouraged, you should be very happy and grateful. She'af sheneflois le b'machshavtei, that even though these thoughts occur to you, humasiach daite mehem, you are able to ignore them and not do it. A person says, look, I don't hurt anybody, but I have really nasty feelings. I think of hurting people. Um, I don't walk around feeling jealousy, but yeah, I'm jealous. I don't steal anything out of jealousy. So the person thinks I really should be upset with myself because that's really nasty. The Rebbe says, no, don't be upset with yourself. Be thankful that you're able to ignore those thoughts and those feelings. Because, lekayim shenemar, by ignoring those thoughts and feelings, you're actually doing a mitzvah. Like we say in the Shema. Every day we say, God tells us, you shall not follow after your heart and after your eyes by which you are led astray. So if your heart and your eyes cause you to have thoughts of sinning, but you don't do it, then you are fulfilling this commandment. Do not follow your heart. Which is a very revealing statement, by the way. God is not saying don't have bad feelings. He's saying don't follow the bad feelings. As if it's a foregone conclusion and it's just a fact of life that you're going to have bad thoughts and bad feelings. And God doesn't say don't have them. God says don't listen, don't follow them. So when you have an unholy thought or a bad mood or whatever it is, and you don't do anything bad, well, you're lucky. Some people can't control themselves. So you're actually fulfilling the mitzvah of not following the temptation. But a person can say, well, that's very nice. All you're telling me is that I could be worse. But what about the fact that I have those bad feelings? I don't want them. So the Rebbe continues, Ve'ein hakosav medaber b'tzadikim. This verse, this commandment, don't follow your heart, is not addressed to tzaddikim, because he wouldn't call the tzaddikim led astray. A tzaddik's heart does not lead him astray. A tzaddik's heart leads him only closer to God. So who is the Torah talking about when he says, don't follow the heart that leads you astray? We're not talking about tzaddikim. Who are we talking about? We're talking about beinanim ki yetzebei. We're talking about the average person, like yourself, shaneflim lehidhure niyav b'machshavte, who have unholy thoughts that arise in the heart, in the mind. Not that he chose it, but it happens. So thoughts of sexual thoughts, for example, whether they're permissible or forbidden, ukishemasiach daite, and when you ignore those thoughts, mekayim lav zeh, then you are fulfilling this commandment. So now a person can ask, whoa, wait. The Rebbe is saying you shouldn't feel bad. On the contrary, you should feel happy. I can understand that I shouldn't feel bad because I'm not a tzaddik, so of course I have unholy thoughts. And it's good that I don't do them. But I should be happy about it? What's to be happy about? So the Rebbe goes on to say, the Omru Rabbi Levracha, sages have taught us that Yoshav v'le'over aveda, a person who remains passive and refrains from sin, neisnem loischar ki'ilu osa mitzvah. He is rewarded as if he did a mitzvah. If you don't sin, it's as if you do a mitzvah. But when is that? If you're tempted to sin, if you think about it and then don't do it, then it's as if you actually did a mitzvah. Ve'al kein tzarech l'smeyach b'kiyum halav, and that's why you should be happy. Kamei b'kiyum mitzvah saseh mamish, as you would when you're performing any other mitzvah. So it's not just could have been worse. At least you didn't do it. No, by not doing it, you're actually fulfilling a mitzvah. So, for example, you're thinking some jealous thought, or you're thinking how much you hate somebody, and you say, no, 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 I don't want to go there. And you change the subject. You have fulfilled a mitzvah. It's like you lit Shabbos candles or gave challah from your dough. Now the Rebbe takes it a step deeper. You shouldn't feel bad over the fact that you have unholy thoughts. Why? Because Adarab, you think that feeling bad makes you a better person? The fact is, ha'atzvus himigasus haruach. That sadness doesn't come from the good part of you. It comes from the arrogant part. She'einei makir mekayme. The person says, I don't want to have such unholy thoughts. I'm disappointed that I have those thoughts. So the Rebbe says, oh boy, you're so arrogant. What do you think you're a tzaddik? To not have those unholy thoughts would mean to be a tzaddik. Well, you're no tzaddik. And that shouldn't come as any surprise. V'al ken yeda levavi, and that's why you're feeling bad to discover that you're not a tzaddik. And how do you know you're not a tzaddik? Shalit tzaddikim bevadai ein neiflim lehem hirhurei shtus ke'elu, because tzaddikim certainly don't have such vain thoughts. In other words, to the tzaddik, such a thought would be silly, meaningless. So tzaddikim don't have such thoughts. And now you discover that you do have those thoughts, and that means you're not a tzaddik, and you're all upset? That's arrogant. If a person was honest about themselves, he is very far from being a tzaddik, and his objective or his goal should be to at least not be a sinner. A tzaddik he's not going to be, but he would like, or he should strive to at least not sin. Afilu sha'achas, even once. So since you're not a tzaddik, harezeis himidas habeinanim va'avidasa, therefore this is your mission in life. What is your mission? Lichbei shayetze v'hadhirhur ha'ele me'halev l'meyach. To conquer the unholy thoughts that rise from the heart to the mind. How do you conquer it? Lahasiach daite legamri memenu. To reject the thoughts completely, with both hands, so to speak. Keniske le'il, as described earlier. So you see, people who think they're going to be religious can get very arrogant. They have illusions of being a tzaddik. And that's just arrogant. It's unreal. You're not realistic about yourself. We are not tzaddikim. We have unholy thoughts, and our job is to reject those thoughts. In other words, when a thought occurs to you and it's a sinful thought, that is not considered a sin. If you choose to think about something sinful, then the thought is itself a sin. You're not allowed to think sinful thoughts. But when a thought occurs, that's not even called thinking. When an idea pops into your head, that's not called thinking. Thinking is an intentional decision that you make that you want to think about a certain subject. And if that subject is unholy, then it's a sin. But the thoughts that occur spontaneously, those are not sins. It's just an opportunity to reject something unholy. It's a sinful thought. So you can sin in action, you can sin in speech, saying nasty things about somebody, or you can sin in thought. Obviously, there's no punishment for a thought. But on the other hand, dwelling on unholy subjects is more corrupting. If you obsess about unholy things, it's more corrupting. You're corrupting yourself more than if you just did it without thinking. So, in some way, the action, of course, is more serious, but the thought can be more damaging because you're corrupting your inner self. So, if you remember, we spoke about this idea that if you don't do something that you would like to do, but you know that your husband doesn't like it, and you don't do it because he doesn't like it, that brings you closer to your husband than if you do something that both of you like. Remember that? It's in your notes somewhere. So here the Rebbe says about this. Your job is to reject an unholy thought when it arises from your heart to your mind. A person can say, well, what kind of life is that? That's what I'm supposed to do? Just have unholy thoughts and refuse to think about it? So the Rebbe says, when you refuse to think about it, what are you actually doing? The thought occurs to you because it's appealing, it's tempting. And you say, no, I'm not even going to think about it. Why are you not going to think about it? Because God asked you not to. When a person does that, God is so touched, he is so inspired by that he blesses you more than if you did a mitzvah. Because you went out of your way to not do something you would like because he doesn't like it. That is more devotion, that is more intimate, that is more of a bond with God than when you do a mitzvah. Because you like the mitzvah anyway. So you're doing it because he told you, but you like it. So it's not all for him. But when you refuse a thought that is tempting to you, but offensive to God, and you say, no, I'm not going to think it, you're giving something up for him. That is a very deep bond. You do this 3 times a day, that's better than davening. So let's see how the Rebbe says it. It's a little Kabbalistic, but we'll understand what it means. Now, every rejection, every time you reject an unholy thought or a temptation, is kafya sitra achra lesato. It causes all the unholiness in the world to be weaker. Because when unholiness is rejected, it weakens. And what, what is the result? Bisarusa de Lesata. Because you moved closer to God, Isarusa de Le'ela, it inspires God to move closer to you. V'eskafya sitra achra de Le'ela hamagbia ashma kanesha. And then God removes the unholiness. He deflates it from its arrogance. And in the Zohar, in the Kabbalah, on Parshas Truma, he marvels, he extols the great pleasure that God gets when you weaken the unholiness in the world, causing God to be more revealed to you than in any other praise or blessing that you give God. Go to the paragraph that begins, therefore. V'lochein, therefore, al yipel lev adam olav, a person should not feel discouraged. V'lo yeda levavei ma'ed, and he shouldn't feel terrible. Gam im yiyakein kol yomov b'mulchama zu. Even if his entire life he will continue to have unholy thoughts occur, and he will continue to reject them. It seems like a waste of time, but it is not. Ki ulai lekach nivra. It could be that that is what we were created for, to weaken all the unholiness and bring God closer to ourselves. It may be our job to constantly be doing this. No fun not being a tzaddik, huh? You're not focusing on the negative. You're focusing on how much God enjoys when you reject it. So you have opportunities to serve God aside from davening and learning and keeping Shabbos. Anywhere, anytime, you can serve God by not allowing those thoughts to linger. Now the Rebbe is going to answer a question that he asked at the beginning of Tanya, 27 chapters ago. The Rebbe asked, Job in the Torah is quoted as saying to God, "You who created the tzaddik and you created the sinner." And the question is, God didn't create sinners. God created people with freedom of choice. If you choose to sin, you become a sinner. But God didn't create sinners. So what does Job mean by that? So the Rebbe says, okay, now we'll understand. It's concerning this that Job said to God, you have created sinful people. Not that they were created actually sinning, God forbid, but he created people who are not tzaddikim, and so they will have experiences similar to the sinner. What are those experiences? Unholy thoughts, temptations. Not that they should actually be sinning, elo sheyagia aleim kemasa harashayim b'machshavtam v'hirhuram levad. They will experience wickedness or sinfulness only in their thoughts. And heim yiyu nilchamim tamid lahasiach daita mehem, and they will successfully reject those thoughts in order to weaken all the unholiness in the world. but they will not be able to permanently banish those thoughts because that only happens for a tzaddik. Only a tzaddik is free of distraction or temptation. I don't know if you're getting the picture here, but religious people can be really crazy. They feel guilty when they don't need to be guilty. They regret things that they should not regret. They're really messed up. Here in Tanya, the Rebbe tells you how to be a good Jew without going crazy. It's not easy. That's why Tanya is so crucial. For those who are already religious, for those who are becoming religious, for those who should be religious, you got to know religion doesn't have to make you crazy. Or just don't become religious. Serve God. Don't complicate things. So am I a tzaddik? Am I perfect? Am I bad? Am I ugly? Am I nasty? Handle it. Don't go crazy. There's good advice. There's wisdom. Life can be wonderful.